Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I am just absolutely delighted, just delighted to be here with you today. So, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a while since I've introduced myself. I think many of you who listen to the show, if you're a loyal listener, hi, welcome back. I'm so happy you're here. But if you're new to the show, maybe somebody recommended the show or pointed you in my direction, or you stumbled across me somehow. And if you're here and you're like, who's this broad? Who is this friggin' lady? Let me just say hi. So I'm Karen Kenney. Most people call me K, Special K, Sweetie. I don't know, some other version of that. But I don't even know sometimes how to introduce myself. I mean, I think I'm of myself mostly as a writer and a storyteller, for sure. I'm also a speaker. I am a spiritual mentor. I am a yoga teacher. I'm a gateless writing instructor. I do Thai yoga massage. I'm a hypnotist. I'm a change worker. I'm a life coach, blah, 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 blah. I do a lot of things. And here on this podcast, what I do is I basically bring all the parts of me to you. I just show up, use some personal storytelling and some universal spiritual principles that hopefully help you to maybe think about something differently, to look at the world differently, to look at yourself differently, right? This is just a podcast where I try to spread a little more love in the world. I kind of think of myself as like Mr. Rogers for adults in a way. I mean, we could never, ever, ever replace Mr. Rogers, but just kind of that vibe, right? And if you see in the background, if you're watching this, you can see my little Bob Ross over there, little Mr. Bob Ross with this little paintbrush and palette. So these were some of my heroes. And I just think, man, the world needs a little bit more kindness, but we also need a little bit more help, don't we? There's so much that I marvel at that we were not taught as children, whether it was in our homes or whether it was at school or from our families of origin or whatever. And, we're taught a lot about a lot of things that on some level don't really matter. And the one thing we're not really taught, many of us, is really how to know ourselves and how to love ourselves and to be kind to ourselves. And we don't always really know like how we tick and how we work and what are some tools we could use, to help ourselves as we navigate this whole human experience. So that's kind of like what the show is about. And once in a blue moon, I have a guest, but mostly you're just stuck with me solo. So if you find yourself here, hi. Okay. This episode, let's dive right into this thing. I think I'm going to call it Head, Heart, Hands. Head, and I'm tapping my forehead. Heart, I'm tapping my chest, right? And hands, I'm wiggling, jazz hands, I'm wiggling my fingers, right? Head, heart, hands. Now, why I wanted to talk about this is because so much of the work that I do is around change work, right? It's taking a look at whether it's a way of thinking, right? Wanting to like maybe shift our perception from fear to love. Maybe it's about wanting to change a belief or an old story that we've been carrying around that's not really serving us anymore. A lot of what I do is transformational or changing, life-changing work, right? And so often what people will hear people say is, they'll say, I want to change X, Y, and Z, or I need to stop X, Y, and Z, right? I have this habit, or I have this pattern, or I have this thing that I do. And a lot of times people try to change from the outside in. They look at their external circumstances and their external behaviors like, oh, I need to stop eating late at night, or, oh, I need to start going to the gym more, or, oh, I need to whatever. And they're really trying to start at the level of the behavior, and they try to start there and work their way backwards. And so often, if we try to start at the level of the behavior, like what I would say your hands are doing, right? If we try to start there, a lot of times we fail. Because a lot of times, why we're doing what we're doing is not only because we have subconscious patterns. Yes, that's a huge thing, right? It's like part of the ways that the brain tries to keep you safe is by keeping you in the familiar. Okay. But it's also that we like to stay in the association of the identity that we've created for ourselves. So a lot of times we try to change something out here in the world, right? I'm doing kind of like with my hands, like out here, the external. But really, we have to start on the internal stuff. And this is like the head and the heart. And one of the things that I often will think about is if your head and your heart are in alignment, the hands will follow. If your head and your heart are in alignment, your hands will follow. So if your head and your heart believe it, your hands will go ahead and do it, right? So we can't skip over like the internal work first. And so often we might be in a situation where we're in pain, we're already suffering. And I don't mean just like physical pain, I mean like the thing that we're doing, whatever these things that we've been choosing to do, whether it's a habit, an addiction, a pattern of whatever you've been doing, right? That's been getting you in trouble or screwing up your relationship or making your marriage not be that great, or maybe you're doing some shady shit in your business, or maybe there's like just like you're doing some things like putting food in your mouth, or doing certain things that are not great for your health, or whatever it might be. A lot of times we try to like start there and we'll fail because we haven't first shifted or changed the way that we're thinking about a thing and the way we actually feel. And I'm tapping my heart again, the way that we feel about a thing. So how we think and how we feel is always going to affect how we will act. And if we are holding on to an old identity, right? One of the things that I often say is like, smoke is gonna smoke. You know what I mean? Like if you identify as a smoker, you're gonna smoke. If you don't identify as a smoker, then you tend not to smoke. If you don't identify as somebody who drinks, if you're a quote unquote non-drinker, then you're probably not going to be stopping by the packy and getting like a 6-pack. You know what I mean? You're not going to be like grabbing a couple of boxes or bottles of wine if you're a non-drinker, unless you're going to a party and you're bringing a gift or something like that, right? So if we change our mind first, right? Change our mind first, change our heart, listen to how we feel, like check in with how we feel, check in with the quality of our thoughts first, and do some work there on that level. Then the things in the external, the actions, the hands, you take care of the head and the heart, the hands are going to kind of take care of themselves. And let me just give you a little bit of an example personally for me. So I'll use, actually, let me use a broader example. But it also applies to me. In fact, my own story is going to be an example of exactly what Paramahansa Yogananda said. So Paramahansa Yogananda, he was a yogi, right? Call him a guru or a teacher or whatever you want to say. I'm not a huge fan of that word, but guru, but so he was a wise teacher from the East. He came over to America. He came over to the West, and he started teaching yoga to Americans. And I'm pretty sure he was in California, right? Most of the time. And when he was in California, it was around the time of like people might say like the hippie generation, right? And there was a lot of like drugs and alcohol and freewheel and sex and partying and Woodstock, like all the stuff was, I mean, Woodstock was on the East Coast, but you know what I mean? A lot of the like free love and all that stuff, right, was happening. And a lot of like, drugs and experimenting and all this stuff. And a lot of the people who were attracted to Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings on yoga and stuff like that, they would go to him though, and they would push back and they'd say, hey, if I come and like learn from you and hang out with you and spend time at the self-realization fellowship or all these things, if I'm doing these things, if I'm quote unquote practicing, if I'm trying to become a yogi, do I have to stop drinking? Do I have to stop smoking? Do I have to stop having sex? Do I have to stop eating animals? Do I have to become vegetarian or vegan or whatever? Because remember, the first tenet of yoga, that first, like that of the 8 limbs of yoga, the first foundation is what we call the yamas and the niyamas. And the very first yama is called ahimsa, which means non-harm. compassion, nonviolence towards yourself and others, including animals, right? So like the whole foundation is do not harm, do not kill, like be kind, be compassionate, right? So, they would be like, do I have to stop, eating animals is what they were really asking. And Paramahansa Yogananda was so wise. And what he would say to them is, no, you don't have to stop doing those things to like be a part of this fellowship, to be a part of this spiritual community. And he said, right, like later on, he said, because if you continue to do this, and if you start to like show up and actually practice and do these things, those things are going to naturally fall away. You won't have to feel like you're giving anything up. They will just naturally fall away. And I found this in myself. When I first started practicing yoga and even teaching yoga, I was still power puffing cigarettes. I was like, I was a smoker. I was a smoker, you guys, back in the day. But I was lucky enough that for whatever reason, whether it's my mind or a certain gene that I have, I don't know, is like I was the kind of kid that like could smoke a pack a day and then just wake up one day and decide that I was done and I would be done, right? But during this time, I would teach a class or like even go to the gym and like work out. And then I'd come out and get in my car and I would like light up and like power puff. And it was like, what are you doing? Right. So the more seriously, I started to practice, and the more seriously I started to taking, my role as a teacher and diving more deeply into yoga, those things just naturally fell away. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I just stopped drinking. I just decided to be a non-drinker. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Eating animals, never. If you really know me and know how much I love animals, eating animals, like murder, like participating in the suffering of animals for a meal, like none of that ever made any sense. But, I'm a little bit of a knucklehead sometimes. And we have cognitive dissonance, and that's a whole other show for another time. We're hypnotized from a very young age, PS, to eat animals, even though it's totally not who we really are, most of us. Okay. So, but, and we're back. But here's the thing is that gradually, I always say gradually, but inevitably, if you're taking this practice seriously, yoga, those things will naturally start to fall away. So you don't have to feel like you're giving anything up or you're sacrificing or you're quote unquote having to do something. When the head and the heart come into alignment with love, when the head and the heart start to shift, the hands are going to follow. So you're not going to want to pick up the booze. You're not going to want to pick up the weed or the cigarettes or whatever. You're not going to want to harm the animals anymore, right? And so that's just like one example. And I know that if you, probably have your own examples, like you can look at your life and realize that when you all of a sudden shifted something internally, and it might be the way that you think about another person. Maybe you learned something about them. Maybe you heard a story. Maybe you became enlightened, right? The light turned on inside of you. You became more spiritually connected and you realized like, oh, they're actually a lot like me. Like, oh, we're more alike than we are different, or oh, like whatever. When we start to have these shifts in perception in our mind, when we start to tell different stories, better stories, when our hearts start to like, our compassion and our empathy and our kindness starts to lead, your hands are going to follow. So, there's nothing wrong with, I'm not wagging my finger at anybody or saying anything's wrong with just trying to like go cold turkey. Cause I cold turkeyed some things in my life, right? Before I had tools, I would just try to use my willpower. I would try to like white knuckle shit and just be like, I'm just going to be like, nope, nope. I'm going to deny myself this thing, or I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. And you're just really trying to use your sheer will. And you're really going against your subconscious mind and the contents of your mind. And it's why a lot of diets fail. It's why a lot of, I'm going to start saving money fails, right? It's because people have not done the internal work first on the level of the mind, the level of the heart, so that we can pave an easier path for the hands, for the behavior to follow. And if we insist on trying to change the external first, it's not that you won't have any success. I'm not saying there aren't some people who can do it. I'm just saying it can be a little bit easier when we start to shift our mind and start to use our mind for the purpose that it was actually created for, which is love. P.S., by the way, extending love, using the heart for what it was used for, which is to love, by the way, and for using our hands for what they were intended for, which is to love people, to help people, to serve people. You know what I mean? So this whole body really is designed to be, I call it like a communication device. And its one gig is to set the dial to the radio station of like KLOVE. You know what I mean? So if you've been kind of bumping up against some changes that you've been trying to make because you've been trying to like drag yourself from the external behavior into like somehow magically, like magical thinking, like, oh yeah, I'm just going to decide that I'm never going to do X, Y, and Z again, even though I've been doing it for the past 3 years daily, or I've been doing this for 20 years. It's like, good luck with that. And that's why a lot of times we need to, and however you get the help, it can be like hiring somebody like me who has a lot of tools in my toolkit, like for, subconscious reprogramming, spiritual mentoring, somatic work, like with the body, like helping the body to feel the nervous system to feel like safety and stuff like that, right? So working on the level of the conscious and the unconscious, working on the level of the heart, working on the level of, remember, emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental. Those four things, get the mind, body, and spirit on board, get the heart on board, and the hands are going to follow. And so maybe this is just an opportunity to pause, to look and see if there's something in your life that you've been trying to shift or change or stop doing or start doing, whether it's with you, your own relationship with yourself. Maybe you've been wanting to, start a meditation practice or create a DSP, a daily spiritual practice. Maybe you've been trying to do something on the physical level, whether, like I said, it's maybe like starting to walk every day or commit to a yoga practice or rejoining the gym or whatever the thing is. Maybe you're one of those people that have been a member of Planet Fitness, paying them 10, 15, whatever, $25 a month for like years, but you never go. And you're just like, what am I doing? Why can't I make myself go? It's a lot of times it's because we're trying to do it first on the level of behavior, on the level of hands, but you haven't checked in with the head and with the heart, because the brain is doing its own particular thing to keep you safe. And the heart might have some feelings and some beliefs about things. So there's one part of you that wants the change, and there's another part of you that's not ready until you bring those online into alignment. The assignment is alignment, I always say. And if we can start to align with the truth of who we are, if we can kind of like take some time to go in. And I understand, like, right now we're at a point in time, I think, where most people just feel kind of completely overwhelmed. And they're like, do I have to work on myself? The whole world's already a shit show. Everything's already hard. Like, I have no energy, KK. I have no time. I have no resources. And the one thing that I will say is, if we, like, the most important thing, and this is to me, and I'm not saying the most important thing in the world isn't your family, your friends, your children, caring for your animals or the environment. I don't mean it like that. But how those things get done well or better is by first us taking a look inside and making the appropriate changes there. And we're not making changes and transforming things because you're fucked up, need to be fixed because you're broken or whatever. That's not the case. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. So much of the work that needs to be done or is really helpful when we do it is more of an unlearning, because we are taught, right? We are taught as children. We learn a lot of things as kids. It gets programmed into us that isn't actually that helpful later on in life. These survival strategies, these survival mechanisms, these patterns, these ways of thinking and seeing ourselves, these identities that we create later on, they start to get in the way. We got to check in every once in a while. and this is why spiritual work is so important, and having a spiritual mentor can be so incredibly helpful. And so often I don't think even people know what a spiritual mentor does. I can't speak for other spiritual mentors. That's not my place to do that. I can only talk to you about like how I approach things. And I know that having a daily spiritual practice is a really powerful thing, but there's a lot of different spiritual tools that you can use. To me, working with yourself on yourself, right? And I always say who you are as one of God's kids, like who you are as an extension of the universe, who you are as part of the one cosmic consciousness is already perfect. But that's not what we're talking about. The things that we're working with or tweaking or shifting or changing, that's the ego personality part. That's the part of you that like this persona that you've created in this lifetime, which is affected by where you grew up, who you grew up with, what your economic situation was like. Did you grow up with a lot of money? Did you grow up poor? Were you a blue collar kid? Were you like a wealthy kid? Did you have two parents at home? Did you have one parent in jail? Did you have one parent dead? Did you have divorced parents? What kind of home? What kind of community? What kind of support was there? Was there food in your house? Wasn't there food? Were you food insecure? Did you, like, were you molested as a kid? What's your ACE score, right? What's your ACE score on that score of like adverse childhood experiences? Like, check that out, right? So all those things kind of shape and mold who we believe ourselves to be. And if we try to, I always say you cannot outperform your identity. You cannot outperform your identity. So if we're trying to do things at the hand level, you might as well just white knuckle your hands or wring your hands, because it's a lot harder to try and change from the outside in than it is from the inside out. And I'm not saying that doing that work to shift your perception from fear to love, because we are so deeply patterned. We do believe so much of the bullshit that the ego tells us. The voice for the inner teacher, the voice for love that is inside of us. It doesn't shout, man. It whispers. It's quiet. It's not forceful. It doesn't try to make you feel crazy or insecure or rushed. And so the voice for the ego in A Course in Miracles, we say the voice of the ego, it speaks first and it speaks loudest. And I always say, and it's wrong. And it's always wrong. And that is the voice of guilt and shame and blame and hurry up and desperation and scarcity and fear and, all that stuff. That voice oftentimes is not your friend. And in this work, we're not trying to kill the ego. We all have an ego, or we wouldn't be like doing the shit that we do, right? We need a certain amount of ego to kind of like, survive and get around. But this ego mind that is always just kind of like in A Course in Miracles, it's like a scavenger dog, the ego mind. It's like a scavenger dog. It's always walking around looking for grievances. It's always looking around trying to make guilt in your unhappiness and your suffering is like when we were little, if you ever watched the Gremlins movie and they would say, don't feed the gremlins, don't give them water, like after a certain time, right? Because that's what happens, The ego is like a little gremlin, man, and it will grow exponentially off of your guilt, your shame, your suffering, your superiority. Like you're so much better than everybody else, but it'll also grow on this idea that you're shittier than everybody else. You know what I mean? That you have it so much harder than everybody else, or, keeping you in that victim loop is just like feeding the gremlin, So I hope this has been helpful in some way, that it's got you thinking about like, maybe what have you been trying to white knuckle? What have you been trying to force yourself to give up or to fix or to change? And have you been trying to do it from the outside in? And if you're somebody who's ready to do it from the inside out and you want some support and help, there's lots of different ways. If you're a local person, you can come to a yoga class of mine, right? But really, the way that I help people is through my group program, my group coaching program, which is The Nest. It's my little spiritual community and membership. It's full of lovely people. And that's like a monthly commitment. You start, you don't like it, you can always leave. But most people come and stay for years and years, right? They love the people in it. They love the resources that they get. They love the community and the connection and all the tools that they learn and all that stuff. And then there are some people who like to go deeper and like to work privately. And those are the people who join me for the Quest, which is my one-to-one spiritual mentoring. So if you're somebody who wants to, take a look inside, especially since out there is so fucking scary right now, right? The external world that everybody wants to fix and change. Do you know how the external world actually changes? Is when enough people get serious and start to do the internal work. Because first we have to shift in here, because when the head and the heart, right? When the head and the heart get online, when the head and the heart believe it, your hands will do it. And how you think and how you feel will affect how you act. And if you change your mind and you listen to your heart first, right? That's how the things on the level of form, the things on the level of our hands, our actions, our behaviors will actually start to shift. So, head, heart, hands, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your spending this time together. I know you could be doing a lot of other things, and the fact that you turned this on, and if you're still hearing my voice right now, thank you for sticking to the end and hanging out. If you want to find out how to work with me, any of those things, get on my newsletter or my email list, stay in touch. Just go to Karen Kenney, Kenney, KarenKenney.com. You can find everything there. If you want to join the nest, it's KarenKenney.com/nest. If you want to join the quest, it's KarenKenney.com/quest. Wicked easy to find. And I appreciate you. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day or night whenever you're listening to this. And wherever you go, may you leave the people, the animals, the places you go, the environment, the planet, and yourself better than how you first found it. Wherever you go, may you and your energy and your love and your presence and your head and heart and hands be a blessing. And it just made me think that, there's a line somewhere in the Bible, or I don't know, I think it's in the Bible, but it's definitely a spiritual thing, where we basically say, like, the divine has no hands but yours, no mouth but yours, no feet but yours, no heart or head but yours, right? So to be in service to our highest self, to be in service to our highest good, to align our head, our heart, and our hands with love is an incredibly powerful thing to do. So just a little added tidbit there. All right, you guys, have a great rest of, like I said, your night or your day. So much love from my heart to yours. Bye.